Hello guys. This video I wanted to call awkward questions about insomnia recovery because I always felt awkward about asking certain questions when I was struggling with my sleep, and I heard different success stories when people were describing how they no longer have insomnia, and I felt not sure whether I want to ask those questions, whether I want to test them, because those questions were kind of like tricky, and I felt like I didn't always wanted to hear the real, the true response, just in case my idea of recovery would be different than their actual recovery. So I didn't want to feel discouraged, but that's why it felt awkward. So I called the video this way, but it doesn't mean that those questions are actually awkward. They're not awkward at all. They're just normal questions. So I put them together. I want to read them one by one and give my answer to them. But I must say that my responses will be based on my personal experience. So after my insomnia ended, I'm just going to, describe what it's like to have life past insomnia. So I cannot speak for other people who recovered. So that doesn't mean that someone else has exactly the same experience. I don't know that. Most probably it is, but who knows? I'm just going to talk for myself. And before I begin reading those questions and answering them, I want to say that originally, when I just started my journey of recovery, I always had an idea of how recovery should look like, and maybe this can resonate with you as well. So I always thought that recovery is about learning again how to sleep well. So I always thought that once I recover, I will become a good sleeper. I will be someone who would know how to sleep in any conditions, will not have any problems, will fall asleep fast with no issues, will not wake up, or will be able to fall back asleep pretty quickly, who will have always refreshed nights, always deep sleep, best quality ever. So there were like a lot of requirements for my sleep, and it was helpful, or it would be helpful for me at that time to learn as soon as possible what the recovery actually is about. Because if I didn't know that, if I didn't, if I wasn't, if I hadn't been how to say it, exposed to the actual truth, my journey would probably be longer. So I think that it's kind of helpful to really understand where we're actually going with the recovery. So to have very realistic expectations. And I hope that you will find this video helpful. So I'm going to read my first question and then just go by order of the questions. After insomnia, is it possible to get your old life back? And the answer is 100% yes. If I try to describe my current sleep and life, and life before insomnia and sleep before insomnia, I would not even tell the difference. It's exactly the same. So basically, insomnia is like getting your old life back and getting your old sleep back. And that means that whatever your sleep looked like before, whatever your life looked like before, maybe you were always a light sleeper, you can return to the same, like, it could be like a sensitive sleeper or whatever. Or if you always, you loved napping, then probably what you will come back is to the same kind of like habits and the same, patterns of your sleep. If you never nap during the day, most probably you will still like not see any need in napping. So I just want to say there's really kind of like no difference, equal sign between before and after journey. So the only difference is that the journey feels very, very different from the past life. But I would say that 100% possible to get your old life back. So and if I would say, like, just very briefly to define recovery, is just like your old sleep minus fear of not sleeping, because insomnia is fear of not sleeping, fear of sleeplessness, fear of whatever, connected to sleep itself. It is the hyperarousal that is created by our brain that tries to keep us safe is what prevents sleep from happening. And once it's no longer there, sleep as it was before is going to stay. All right, second question. Will my sleep get even better than before? Now, that is a tricky question, and that is the rabbit hole where I got myself into. Because as I said in the beginning, I always had the idea that my sleep after recovery will look like this. But that was a very unrealistic picture of my sleep, because it was not even that sleep as I had before insomnia. It was more like a very manageable, very controllable, predictable sleep. And in reality, sleep is nothing like that. Sleep is everything but perfect. We can always wake up from whatever reason. It can take us a while to fall asleep. We can wake up unrefreshed after 8 hours or 9 hours. And very often, actually, when I sleep like really like long, more than 8 hours, the next day usually is very difficult. I'm so tired. So I would say that the expectation that we put on ourselves on recovery can be actually something that can prolong that recovery. So I would say that improving the skill of sleeping, that is kind of impossible, because we are not in control here. We cannot make sleep happen. We cannot make or speed up the sleep onset process, because it is always done by our body, and that is unconscious processes. Something like digestion or something. We are not really thinking like how to digest. It's just the body does it. The same way sleep happens. We are not in control there. But that said, it doesn't mean that we are not allowed to provide comfortable conditions after we recover. I think like everyone deserves like comfy bed and not no sleep disruptions, or at least apparent like no noisy surroundings. But these are kind of secondary. We can always provide comfort and then see what happens. And usually sleep does like kind of like look nicer and better, but it doesn't mean that by doing X we are getting the required form of sleep. And I think it's also worth saying that sleep is not a skill. Sleep is not a habit. It is a function. And we can provide like an adequate condition for it, but we cannot really approach it as if we would approach, let's say, diet or exercise. It's not in the same category. It's a function of the body. It's not something that we consciously choose how to do it. So I hope that gives better idea of of the nature of sleep. Okay, so third question. Will I always remember about insomnia? Now, the memory in itself is neutral. That means that we cannot erase memory. Whatever happened during insomnia is probably going to stay as something like as a fact, something that happened like part of your biography. You will easily access that memory. You can like recall what kind of nights you had and just remember yourself through that time. But what happens after the recovery is that the emotional component, or this traumatic response to that memory, is no longer there. So we can easily revisit our memories without those memories affecting our present. It's always like it's just, for me, my insomnia recovery is just like something that happened. I can just like write it down. I remember most of the things, and just close it and just go live my life. And so it doesn't really impact my current. It's just something that, okay, something happened, part of my history, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to erase it, and it's not even possible to erase it. And I usually say, so think about it like, let's say, your last Christmas memory, and that's what's going to be after, with the memory of insomnia after you recover. It's just going to be one of those memories that happened like somewhere, let's say, the same as if you remember what happened in your childhood, something like some innocent, like fun, memory. Not maybe fun, but it would be more like neutral one. So yeah, hope that's clear. Now, next question, will speed bumps be happening after recovery? And that is a popular question and a tricky one, because the reason why speed bumps happen is because we are afraid of not sleeping, or we are afraid of speed bumps happening. But for those who don't know what speed bump is, it's basically sleeping less after sleeping more. So on the recovery journey, we always have this kind of like, bumps on the way. When we begin to feel better, we begin to sleep better. And then the hyperarousal fear returns and we are not sleeping for some time, and then goes back to, sleeping more and better. And then again, so speed bumps usually very scary for people. But the reason why speed bumps happen is because we are afraid of those speed bumps. We don't want to experience them. But the recovery, once the recovery kind of like comes to an end, we no longer fear speed bumps in itself, then there is basically no reason for speed bumps to happen. But at the same time, the difference between a speed bump and a casual disruption, sleep disruption that can happen to any normal human being on the planet, this difference becomes like non-existent there. So then at some point, we just don't know whether like the reason why we are awake, is it like, can we call it a speed bump, or is it just a normal sleep disruption? And at some point, I felt like I needed to let go of the definition of speed bump, because then I will always be in that insomnia world where my language even will be kind of like defined by insomnia. So I just decided like, yeah, but I'm coming back not to an ideal sleep. I'm coming back to the sleep like I had before. And before insomnia, I could stay like for a while before falling asleep in bed and not sleeping, and that's completely okay. So I kind of even stopped calling sleep disruptions speed bumps. So, and they stopped bothering me. So, and usually like whatever the sleep disruption happens for some time, and then it kind of naturally transitions to sleep, and we don't have any problem with that. We just don't even remember how that happens, and then the next nights just go normally. So I would say the speed bumps, I would say the kind of speed bumps where we have like a emotional struggle when we ponder why we are not sleeping and so on, that kind of fades away because there is no point in them. But that said, sleep can still be disrupted for whatever reason. So I would say like really moving on from the whole vocabulary and just embracing like the variety of nights, the variety of sleep, how it can look. And it will be like 99% of nights will be completely fine, and there will be like one night when you wake up and then you begin to think about something that happened at work, and whatever it can happen. Just think about yourself before insomnia. That's how it's gonna be after insomnia. At least that was for me. And currently, if I have like let's say I work late and then I go to bed, and my brain still keeps working, and I still keep thinking about the stuff that I worked before, but it's never the thinking process about not sleeping itself. So I hope that's the a good explanation. All right, I see people from success stories say that they occasionally get a bad night. So is it really a success? I know this question is very tricky because I know that we all like at some point expected that the night, like the recovery will be like sleeping great every night, not having any struggles and so on. And when we hear someone saying that they don't have any insomnia, but then they occasionally get a, random night when they don't sleep, then of course it's going to be, somewhat like triggering. Oh my God, what are you saying? So that's what you call recovery? I don't buy that. I don't want that. But for a very long time, I tried to kind of like find a good answer to that, because I don't see now anything strange with like when some person says like, yeah, occasionally they can have like a night when I don't sleep perfectly, and that's okay. And I completely understand what they're saying. I don't see any problem there. But for someone who is still struggling, hearing that can be triggering in itself. So I want to kind of ask you this question. Imagine if you would get the same question, but before you had insomnia. So when you never had fear around sleeping, you never had problems with sleep, like what you are going through now, and someone would come to you and ask you, how do you sleep now? How does your night look now? Or let's say think about like your past like couple of weeks and just describe how it was, how your sleep was. And I'm sure that most of you would actually say something like, it was all right. it was kind of fine, but there were like a couple of nights when I just like, yeah, but I was thinking I couldn't fall asleep, or I was not refreshed, it didn't feel good, and blah blah. And but the way how you would say, or any person who never had insomnia, the way how they would say it is something like, yeah, something happened, not particularly like great, but that's okay, so there wouldn't be any sort of like catastrophizing and struggling with that, with having having had a bad night. So I would say, if someone, if let's say a person before insomnia could give the same answer, then why a person without after insomnia, after being recovered from insomnia, they cannot say exactly the same thing, say that most of the nights are fine, they don't really bother with them, and then there is occasional night when whatever they wake up and they're not refreshed, or they wake up during night and then they like lie for a while in bed and so on. So I would say really that's so normal for any human being to have occasional sleep disruption. Not a problem in that. I don't see any. Okay, next question is, can I unlearn what I know now? And I know that's scary for someone to who been on this journey for some time, learned something. Let's say they learned about um, how to accept nights, or accept wakefulness, and not to resist. And they already saw, when we let go of trying to control how sleep starts happening effortlessly. And at some point, of course, we are afraid, what if we forget that, how to do that? And I would say that the reason why we go through those ups and downs is because we want to teach the brain, teach that very kind of like on a subconscious level, that it is safe. And once that knowledge gets into under that subconscious level, then it's really difficult to kind of erase it. I don't even see that it's even possible to erase what we learn once it's kind of been internalized by our like very, how to say, like very reactive automatic part of the brain. So of course we can, let's say, forget something like we learned on a rational level, but once it's recorded, like once our let's say amygdala or limbic system, or like knows that this is safe, is going to view that for the rest of the for the rest of your life. So I don't see how after recovery the fear will return, once we truly learn that not being awake or not sleeping is not a threat. So yeah, I would say that. What is the difference between a recovered insomniac and a person who never had insomnia? Now, first, like if you look at outer layer, like let's say like how they sleep, how they live their lives, there's no difference. Really, there's no difference. Person who never had insomnia in their life, they never obsess about sleep, or at least like they don't worry about that too much. They don't build their mm, life around insomnia. And the same happens with person who has recovered from insomnia. They also don't build their life around insomnia. They just live their life however they want, without considering like how it will impact their sleep and so on. So in that regards, it's basically the same. The difference here, I see the only difference is in the fact that most of the people who never had insomnia, they live in this kind of blissful ignorance that sleep cannot be controlled. So if anyone who been like acquired insomnia in the like past couple of months, so before that time there were kind of this people who never had insomnia basically, but at some point certain conditions happened that taught the brain that not sleeping is bad, and therefore the whole like story created. So I would say people who never had insomnia and they live in that kind of like a blissful ignorance of not knowing that they're not in control, and that sleep, doesn't adhere by their rules or specific actions, then they kind of, there might be a possibility that they can later on in life, they can acquire that fear. So insomnia kind of a possibility somewhere in the future for them. While someone who recovered, already past that, and they're basically immune to insomnia happening in the future. So I would say someone who recovered is in a much kind of sound position regarding like the rest of their life, because basically there's I don't see any way of like, you know, learning again that not sleeping is a threat again. So I would say that's the only difference. But that said, that doesn't mean that every person who never had insomnia will get insomnia. It's like it can happen that they will just live their whole their life never get that you know, issue. But some of them will have like this kind of problem. Will learn that, you know, the sleeplessness is somehow undesirable, and they will get down the rabbit holes, unfortunately. Especially because we are all supported or bombarded by the messages how, you know, if you don't sleep, you're gonna die the next day or whatever, you know, all this crazy um, how to say, misunderstandings regarding how sleep actually works, and that sleep is not really the cure for everything. It's gonna create some tension for people who never had insomnia. Okay, so the next question is, will I always need to adhere to sleep window and other things, basically, like not look at time or whatever the approaches we did during recovery insomnia? And usually if you are familiar with CBTI, with a sleep restriction, or getting up from bed if you cannot fall asleep, or let's say in timeless window, when we don't track time at night, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of like, could be like a lot of helpful behavioral patterns that we can kind of establish in the beginning of insomnia, that can help us to learn to let go of control, stop trying, and help us befriend wakefulness. But I would say at some point, there is no need in doing any of that, because we would, by the time we would already know that we are safe, sleep doesn't need our protection, it will happen, the body knows when to sleep and how to sleep and so on. So I think, like personally for me, at some point I had to let go of anything that I did. So that means that I don't have any sleep window. I don't adhere to any sleep window. I don't adhere to any timeless this. It doesn't mean that I don't have a need to check what time it is at night, but I'm not forbidden from knowing in principle what time it is, because, you know, if I happen to wake up and go to bathroom, and then I walk past some appliance and I see the time on this, or I don't know, I get SMS at night and I look at phone and then there's time there. It's like I don't really make a big deal out of it. So it's just not a factor in my life currently. And yeah, so I would say at some point we all it happens naturally. We just let go of anything, of any efforts, of any habits that we developed during like insomnia recovery. At least that's how it looks for me. Okay, is sleep recovery even possible for me? Now, this kind of question, I think, happens to every person at some point, or maybe it kind of stays for the most majority of the journey, is thinking that, okay, it's possible for someone, and I see someone getting better and so on and so on, but what if my case is special? What if I will not be able to recover? Maybe it's not even possible. And then they begin to try to explain it with, oh, maybe I have a special personality, maybe my conditions are different, and so on and so on. But I just want to say that from a physiological perspective, I don't see any reason why it would not be possible for someone. It really doesn't make any sense, because the way how here we kind of work with hyperarousal is based on how our mind works. And since all our minds work in more or less the same way, I don't see any reason to even think that for someone it is like impossible by default. So I would really, if someone would have this kind of question, is it possible for me? I would actually inquire into the nature of that question. Maybe it is basically the anxious mind that tries to create a self-doubt in yourself, and it's just a way to keep hyperarousal going. But in reality, I really don't see why someone would not be possible to recover. The next question is pretty much connected here. Are there people who can never recover in spite of that knowledge? And that is another kind of like how to say, like the question we are afraid to ask, because we want to know what type of people or whatever what kind of things can prevent like recovery from happening. And I would say again, like from physiological, from how our brain works, I don't see any obstacle to for anyone. Like I think it's 100% possible to recover from insomnia, recover from that fear of not sleeping. The only thing what I can think of, when a person kind of stays in the belief that insomnia is not possible, so they are deeply assured that it's simply not possible, and that belief is really strong, so they will have like a very kind of like closed mind for that. So I would say for recovery, we really need to have like leave the door open at least 5 centimeters, so that there's some possibility of some like trying to understand, trying to learn, trying to see through the illusions and fears there. But when we in the beginning we come here with kind of made up decision, it's not possible, I don't see how we can work past that belief that something is not possible, and like period, is something that can be the major obstacle here. So I would say yeah, like open mind is definitely needed. And if someone doesn't have that open mind, then it could be possible that they will keep recreating their belief from day to day, and then by the end of their life they will say like, oh, okay, all my life I struggled with that, and here's a confirmation of my belief. So I would say whatever we believe, that's what we are going to get. So that's why at some point I also had this kind of like very kind of how to say, doomed thoughts, where I was like, oh, it's not possible, I cannot imagine how that could be possible. So but and at the time it felt scary, but now I realize that if I would keep having like closing my mind towards anything, towards any education, towards any new information that disproves that point of view, if I wouldn't be open to that, I can imagine that I would be still struggling with that. So yeah, I think that it's really important to acknowledge our beliefs here and leave the door open at least a little bit. Leave the door open for the doubt in that belief that it's not possible. Because I always had something like, yeah, but I cannot, this cannot be it. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that being not possible. So that kind of like always like the drive that I had inside, that it should be possible. It's like, it's just, there has to be way out. It would actually kind of like, fueled me to keep going and not to resort in this kind of like very dark place where I just say, oh, it's not an effort, nothing is possible. But yeah, but there are definitely people who think that. And I hope that at some point they will be able to open their minds to new information, to new like experiences, and basically see for themselves whether that belief is true or not. So I would say that is the biggest kind of like the obstacle for someone to be blocked from the recovery. But physiologically or whatever, like like mechanically, or I don't know how to call it, but I don't see that it's impossible. And the last question here is like, many people ask me that, is how do I sleep now? So what is my personal, how my sleep currently looks like? And as I said in the beginning, I sleep exactly as I did before insomnia. And that could look in so many ways. I mean, most of the time I don't really, actually, I never remember how I fall asleep. I go to bed. I know that sometimes if I did something like before, like, and I was like, let's say yesterday I was researching some furniture thing, and I went to bed, and I remember my mind kept going like with, okay, maybe I should buy this, and thinking about different combinations. So there was some thinking process that was happening, but the content of it was not the sleep itself. It was something else. I was really kind of entertained by some planning activities. So that kept me awake for some time, but I don't even remember when that happened, when I fell asleep. There is definitely no more self-monitoring process going on, like, oh, am I sleeping enough or so on. There's nothing like the insomnia thinking patterns are no longer there. Not that I'm against them. I'm not like I'm not okay having them. I'm perfectly okay with having them, but it's just they just don't happen. They cease to exist in my mind because there's no resistance from my side. And sometimes I could sleep like 9+ hours. Sometimes I can take naps. Sometimes I can sleep like less than that, let's say when I have to travel, and then I have to wake up early, and then I had like long preparations. So the window for sleep was really short. So there was like really little sleep, but that's okay. There's no more kind of like pondering and obsessing about the past nights. So I would say the night it looks differently. Like every night, always somehow different from one another, but all of them are really all right. I don't have any problem with sleep, or with sleep being in a different way. And let's say if I happen to wake up like at night, sometimes I just like turn to one side, and then my brain can turn on, and then just start thinking about some, usually at night, if I ever like wake up like and start thinking something, it's usually about some creativity. My brain just like turns on the creative mode, and I usually come up with some good ideas. Sometimes I think about the topics for articles, and write articles in my mind for my like blog. When I'm in the bed, and then like just thinking, okay, I should talk about this and this and this. So to me, sometimes like wakefulness changed the whole like appearance. To me, it's not a time for torture, but sometimes like if I happen to be awake at night, it's usually connected with something like either it's some creativity, or it's something like I just keep thinking about something else. And the onset of sleep after that just happens so smoothly. I don't really hurry that up. I just let it unfold as it wants. If it lasts 4 hours, fine by me, but I usually don't even notice how long it lasts. It's just at some point it's like I fall asleep, and then I wake up in the morning and just go on with my day. So that's how my sleep looks, and it's not how I thought in the beginning of my recovery. That's how my recovery looked like. But I'm really how to say, glad that basically the life after insomnia and life before insomnia, they don't have any difference like now. So the only thing is that I get to talk about it now, because now I realize that this topic is very interesting for me as something like I want to share my insights with you guys. So I keep talking about sleep a lot, but it doesn't come from the place of like fear or whatever. Like there's something to still like work on my fear of not sleeping, but it's more like comes from a place of, yeah, I like this topic. I want to help more people, and I just do talk about it whenever I have a chance, or whenever I have inspiration to talk about that. Okay, so I hope that it was helpful. If you still have some questions about the recovery particularly, just drop them in the comment section. Maybe I'll make a next video if there are some questions that I didn't include, or maybe I did not expand enough on something. So just let me know. It would be really good if I could get some idea for my next videos, and wish you nice rest of the day. Bye.